There is a lake in the mountains that has killed everything around it twice, not by drowning, not by flood, in a single breath. On the night of August 21st, 1986, this lake inhaled and then it exhaled, and across 16 miles of Sleeping Valley, every man, woman, child, cow, bird, and insect simply stopped breathing. No explosion you could hear, no fire, no warning. Roughly 1,800 people died in their sleep without ever knowing why. This is scenario 0 today. A lake exploded and silently killed 1,800 people in the dark. And right now, it is refilling like a loaded gun. The first man to walk into it was a survivor from the high ground. He had ridden his motorbike down toward the villages at dawn to check on his family. He passed the first body and thought the man was sleeping. Then he passed another and another, and then he understood that the valley had no living thing left in it. The village of Nyos, Chas, Subum, Fung, communities that had farmed those slopes for generations. When rescuers reached them, they found whole families, dead in their beds, mid-gesture, mid-meal, a lamp still standing upright on the table. Cooking fires burned down to cold ash. Everyone was simply where they had been when the air turned to poison. The strangest detail for the first responders was the absence of strangeness. No fire damage, no structural collapse, no floodline. The doors were intact. The roofs were intact. The crops in the fields were intact. Only the bodies told them that anything had happened at all. Survivors who woke described the same thing. A faint smell. Some said rotten eggs. Some said gunpowder. Some smelled nothing at all. A warmth, a strange bubbling roar from the direction of the lake. And then they fell unconscious where they stood. The ones who lived woke hours later, on the ground, surrounded by the dead. What killed the valley of Nyos was not volcanic fire. It was a single gas, carbon dioxide, the same gas you exhale, with every breath, harmless in trace amounts. But carbon dioxide is heavier than air. At high concentration, it does not burn you. It does not poison your blood. It simply takes the place of the oxygen you need to live. At about 10% concentration in the air, carbon dioxide causes unconsciousness within a minute. Above 15%, it stops the body's drive to breathe entirely. There is no struggle, no gasping. The brain, starved of oxygen, simply switches off, often before the victim even registers that anything is wrong. Now the question, where does a lake get enough carbon dioxide to flood an entire valley in a single night? The answer is what makes Lake Nyos one of the most dangerous bodies of water on the planet. Beneath it, in the old throat of a dead volcano, magma still breathes, and it has been breathing into the bottom of that lake for centuries. Here is the part that defies intuition. At the bottom of a deep lake, the water pressure is immense, and under pressure, water can hold enormous amounts of dissolved gas. The same way a sealed bottle holds a soda, perfectly still and flat until you twist the cap. Lake Nyos was a bottle of carbonated water nearly 700 feet deep, and the cap had been screwed on for 100 years. Nobody knows the exact trigger. A landslide off the steep crater wall, a small rockfall into the deep water, a cold night cooling the surface, until it grew heavier than the layers below and began to sink. Any of these could have done it, because all it took was for one thin slice of that deep, gas-loaded bottom water to rise, just a little. As that water rose, the pressure on it dropped, and as the pressure dropped, the dissolved carbon dioxide came out of solution as bubbles. The bubbles made the water lighter. Lighter water rose faster. Faster water lost pressure faster. More gas came out. More bubbles. Faster still. In the language of disaster, this is a runaway feedback loop. In plain language, the lake uncapped itself and could not stop. When it reached the surface, the lake erupted. Witnesses on the high ground saw a fountain of water blast more than 300 feet into the night air. A wave surged over the 80-foot rim of the crater and stripped the far shore, and out of that wound poured the thing that did the killing. A cloud of pure carbon dioxide, invisible, cold, and heavier than the air it pushed aside. An estimated 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide had been stored in that water. It released in well under an hour. The cloud, roughly 50 meters thick, sank into the valley and began to flow downhill, silent and unstoppable, following the terrain. Exactly like water, it moved at perhaps 30 to 50 miles an hour, faster than anyone could run. The people in its path had no defense because they had no warning. You cannot see carbon dioxide. You cannot, at lethal concentration, reliably smell it. By the time a sleeping body would normally jolt awake gasping, the gas had already replaced the oxygen in the room. The alarm never came. The breath just stopped. The cloud travelled 16 miles. It killed in waves that nobody timed because everyone in each wave was already gone. In the village of Nios, of around 800 people, the survivors could be counted on a single hand. In the lower villages, entire families were erased down to the last infant. An estimated 3,500 head of livestock died with their owners. Birds dropped from the trees. Insects fell silent in the grass. For 2 days afterward, the valley was so devoid of life that the bodies did not decay in the usual way. Even the bacteria and scavengers that should have come were dead or driven off by the lingering gas in the low ground. And then there were the survivors, the ones who woke more than a day later with strange blisters and skin lesions on the parts of their bodies that had touched the ground. Pressure sores from lying unconscious and unmoving for 15, 18, 30 hours in the same position. They woke into a silence so total that many believed at first that they alone were left alive in the world. Here is the detail that turns a tragedy into a warning. Lake Nios was not the first. 2 years earlier, in 1984, a smaller lake 60 miles away, Lake Monaun, had done the exact same thing and killed 37 people. At the time, the authorities suspected foul play. Nobody yet understood that a lake could load itself like a weapon because the gas comes from the magma below. It never stops. Every single day since 1986, carbon dioxide has been seeping back into the bottom of Lake Nios. The bottle is being recharged, drop by drop, year by year. Scientists who monitor it measured the dissolved gas climbing steadily back toward the saturation point that killed 1,800 people. So engineers did something that has never been tried anywhere else on Earth. Starting in 2001, they lowered long pipes, hundreds of feet, into the deep, gas-rich bottom water and let physics do the rest. Lift that water just a little, the gas bubbles out. The bubbles make it lighter, and the column self-propels into a permanent, controlled fountain, a deliberate, miniature limnic eruption, bleeding the lake's pressure off on purpose. It is working slowly, but the lake is enormous. The recharge is relentless, and there is a second clog. No pipe can drain the natural dam of loose volcanic rock that holds Lake Nios in is eroding. If it fails, the lake empties downstream, and the sudden loss of pressure could trigger the exact catastrophic release the pipes are meant to prevent. So, the question this channel always asks, if the lake erupted tonight and you were in the valley, could you survive? The answer depends on one thing above all others, not strength, not speed, but altitude. Whether you are above the cloud or inside it. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air. That single fact is the whole game. The cloud hugs the ground. It pours downhill. It pools in valleys, hollows, basements, cellars, and low rooms. The people who died at Nios died lowest. The handful who lived were, almost without exception, on high ground, uphill, upstairs, or on a slope. The cloud flowed past, beneath them. So if you ever find yourself near a deep crater lake in volcanic country and you hear a sudden roar from the water, or smell a strange sharp tang, or feel an unexplained warmth in the night air, you do not investigate. You do not go toward the lake. You go up immediately. Every foot of elevation you put between yourself and the valley floor is a foot of breathable air. And if you cannot get high, if the cloud is already on you. The cruelty of this killer is that there is very little you can do. You cannot hold your breath long enough to outrun a cloud moving faster than you. But knowing what it is buys you seconds, and seconds spent climbing instead of freezing are the only seconds that have ever saved anyone from this. The dead of Nyos never had that knowledge. You now do. Lake Nyos and Lake Monaul are not unique. They are simply the two we caught in the act. Any deep lake sitting over volcanic activity in a stable tropical climate that lets the layers of water settle and never mix can do this. Scientists call them exploding lakes, and the largest one of all is not in Cameroon. On the border of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo lies Lake Kivu. It is 1,000 times larger than Lake Nyos. Its deep water holds an estimated 300 cubic kilometers of dissolved carbon dioxide and methane, and living on its shores in the cities and villages around it are roughly 2 million people. If Kivu ever turns over, the dead of Nyos will look like a rounding error. We do not run this channel to frighten you about lakes. We run it because the dead of Nyos teach the one lesson that runs through every scenario we cover. The disasters that take the most lives are almost never the loud ones. They are the quiet ones, the invisible ones, the ones you never learned to fear until it was too late. If this scenario taught you something you did not know this morning, subscribe to Scenario Zero. We are going to keep walking into the dark hypothetical, the silent killers, the loaded lakes, the threats hiding in plain sight, so that in the bright reel you are slightly more ready than you were before you pressed play. Yes, in closing, no cadence promise.